Friends, today is the yortzeit of my mother, Alea Shalom, Chana Bat Miriam, and that's why we have a Seuda, and I would like to say some Divrei Torah in her memory. In this week's parasha, Parashat Ki Tetzeh la milchama al oyevecha, untano Adonai Elohecha biyadecha v'shavita shivyo. The Torah says, when you go out to war, and of course the Peshat is we're talking about milchemet. Usually it should be milchemet mitzvah, but even when it is milchemet hareshut, like our sages said, milchemet hareshut hakatuv medaber, which means even if it is an optional war, of course, after you verify that it's needed, either because of its of defense or protection, or even gains and interest, like we find in the Gemara in Masechet Berachot, when they came in the morning to David HaMelech, and they said to him, King David, people are having a hard time. There's not much parnasah, not much money. What do we do? So first he advised, as the Gemara says, he advised that lechu hitparnesu ze mizeh. You Jews, you could facilitate the parnasah of your fellow Jew by doing business between each other. So they said to him, Your Majesty, you know what is to be a Jew? To be a Jew is not just, to be a Jew means you're a king. You cannot compare the parnasah of a Jew who is a king to the parnasah of anyone. Therefore, by advising us to help each other, even though we can do it, but it's not going to be enough. Even the poor among us, they want to be pampered. We are spoiled. We are not a nation that was meant to be a nation of work. Like in the time of the Inquisition in Spain, the nobles, there was two classes in the country: the class of the noble and the class of the picaros. The peasants and the low life people. So when you told the noble, when the country of Spain went down the drain, there was no money anymore. So they said to the noble people, which consisted of a very big part of the population, do some work. They said, what? Are you crazy? Work is not for us. Chas v'shalom, this is nothing to compare with what is meant for the Jewish people. Our sages said, Gedola melacha. One has to work. Work is great. No question about it. But Am Yisrael has a different nature, even though it is a nation of workers. But at the same time, we are a nation of kings. And Hashem gave us a nefesh of a king. And that's the reason why Hashem, by the way, makes sure that in the eyes of the world, Jews are richer. Am I right or not? That's what people think, at least. That's what the world thinks. Why? Because they are used to the fact that Jews have a bigger eye. They are more spoiled, call it. They have to have more. Why is that? Because their nefesh is rechava. Since their nefesh is a kingly, a royal nefesh, so therefore, a Jew usually, it's not normal to see a Jew very poor, even though the truth is that we have many poor people, and we have to help them. So David HaMelech said, Hitparnesu ze mizeh. If one has more than the other, so take care of them. So they said to him, it's impossible, because even if we take care of them, how do you deal with the Jewish people? They want plenty. Then David HaMelech said, what is the meaning? He says, in that case I give you permission to go and make war with the neighboring nations. Of course, what kind of advice is this? You don't go to war just like this. It would be very bad if you go to a war just because you want a larger kind of life. But we understand that David HaMelech knew what he was saying, that in fact we are talking about the neighboring countries who used to harass the Jewish people. They were terrorists. So one day he says, you know what? Let's go to war with them. anyway we have to finish with them. We are harassed every day, so it's time to finish with them. At the same time, we are going to have plenty of shalal, plenty of possessions that we can take, and this way the country will feel better. So now, the Torah says, "Ki tetzeh lamilchama al oyebecha." So when you go to this kind of war against your enemies, chas v'shalom, that we should take arms against a friendly nation, only against a nation who is your oyev, your enemy. Then, in that case, even though it's milchemet hareshut, even though it's an optional war, it's not a war that God said that you have to go like the 7 nations, HaKenaani, ve'Hiti, ve'Emori, ve'Perizi, ve'Yevusi. Those are the 7 nations which is a mitzvah to fight and to eradicate in those times, of course. But even if you go to Milchemet HaReshut, an optional war, when it is needed against your enemies, Hashem, I promise you, Hashem, Beshavita untano Adonai Elohecha biyadecha, Beshavita shivyo. Hashem guarantees that we will win the war, and we shall even take plenty in captivity. That's the pshat of the pasuk. Our sages discovered that this pasuk also is talking about the biggest enemy that we have. What is the biggest enemy that we have? Yetzer hara. B'yetzer hara katuv medaber. So therefore the Torah says, Ki tetzeh lamilchama al oyebecha. When you go out to war against your enemy, which means when you take out arms and you go to war against your evil inclination. Now, what is the point there? The hadgasha, what is the emphasis? The emphasis is that there are 2 kinds of people. Both of them are good. But there is a difference. One, when the Yetzer Hara comes to him, so he goes against him and he defeats him. Tzaddik, okay. But there is a higher level of tzaddik. Before the Yetzer Hara comes to you, you go to war against him. Which means, you prepare yourself. You do things that are as a preparation towards the possibility of having Yetzer Hara. Do I have to give you an example? I mean, for example, you go to outside, the world is full of Yetzer Hara, wherever you go. So a good tzaddik is going to try to avoid going outside, like it's known about the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon, I told you this story. The Vilna Gaon, alav shalom, was like a malach, he was like an angel in this world. The purest man he could ever see. He never saw the outside. He's always learning Torah, non-stop, day and night. One day, his best friend, who was Rabbi Yaakov of Duvna, the famed Ba'alam Meshalim, who always gave us pirushim based on parables. So he came to visit him. He was his friend, so he came to visit him. That doesn't mean they were friends like the way we know. Rabbi Yaakov Miduvna was a great Talmid Chacham, but still he regarded the Vilna Gaon as his Rebbe also. Which means when he spoke with him, he spoke with fear, with reverence, with awe. So he came to visit, and he found that the Vilna Gaon was extremely upset. He says, Rabbi, what's the matter? He said to him, I am very restless because I need someone to tell me what is wrong with me. I need someone to give me tochecha. You always blame me that I give you tochecha, but the truth is that you should say thank you. Whenever you hear tochecha, tochecha means rebuke, reprimand, remonstrance. So he says, I need someone to tell me what's wrong with me. What's wrong with you? The Vilna Gaon has nothing wrong with him. He's pure like a malach. So he said to him, I mean, maybe because people don't find any fault in you, that's why they don't give you tochecha. He says, I know I have many faults, but I would like to hear, what are they? Please, go ahead and give it to me. Rabbi Yaakov of Duvna said to him, Rabbi, I'm afraid if I tell you, you might get angry at me. He says, I promise you I will not get angry at you. Just go ahead, give me your punches. Are you sure, Rabbi? Yeah. Huh? Yes. Oh, are you sure? I can? I really can? Go ahead. And then you see Rabbi Yaakov Miduvna becoming aggressive. And he says, hey, who do you think you are? You think you are a malach? You think you are a pure man and everything? Of course you are a pure man because you stay home even though you don't see the outside. Go and mingle with people like we all do. And then let's see if you remain as pure as you are. Go out. And the Vilna Gaon lowered his head. You're right. So the Rabbi Yaakov says, oh yeah, you mean that you're going to start going out? So the Vilna Gaon says, no, I know, I understand. That's my blame, that's my fault. But I cannot take the chance of going outside. Because going outside is full of Yetzer Hara. Wherever you go, there are pictures, there are people, women, men, wherever you go, wherever you turn, you have the armies of the Yetzer of Satan are everywhere. So, therefore, leave me where I am, please. I don't want to take any chances. So that's so. So the Torah says, Ki tetzeh milchama. So we already discussed the kind of person who does not sin whenever the Yetzer Hara comes to him. He defeats him. That's very good. How much can you ask? But there are those who are even higher than that. Those who prepare themselves for the eventual, the possible encounter with Yetzer Hara. Now that is something that is unbelievable. Let me explain that with your permission. In this parashat Ki tetzeh, there are at least 2 laws that are extremely strange. Very strange. Mystery. Mamash mysterious. What are they? The first one is the case of Isha Yefat To'ar. The Torah says, in case you have to go to war, and you found, in the midst of that war, you found among the captives, the prisoners, there are of the enemy, women, children, everything. If you see a beautiful woman there, all right, you desire her, go ahead, take her. Just make sure you follow certain laws, take her home for 30 days. Then you have to give her a haircut, that she shouldn't look that beautiful as she was. And then after 30 days, if you still want her to be your wife, marry her. Our sages say that this cannot. That's the first case, okay? And our sages said, what kind of law is this? You mean the Torah is allowing me to take a woman who supposedly should be forbidden? I mean, first, she's not Jewish. Second, who says that you see a beautiful woman, you go to her? Since when? No, what are you not talking about Eshet Ish? I'm not talking about Eshet Ish, obvious. I'm talking now about plain woman. Why? You like her, that's it. You are allowed. That's not the way of the Torah, between you and me. Is this the way of the Torah? On the contrary, the Torah teaches us tzeni'ut, hilchot yihud, not to be, even with a kosher young girl, you are not allowed to be with her in the same room, And here the Torah vehemently tells you, you know what? You like her? Go ahead, you could take her. That's a very big mystery. The Torah is allowing us suddenly to do such a thing. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Our sages did say in the Gemara, כיוון שהוא עלול לקחת אותה באיסור, מוטב שיקח אותה בהיתר ולא באיסור. Since we know in the frenzy, you know what's frenzy? In the heat of the war, all the instinctive desires of a person become like animalistic, and one is practically impossible for him to control himself. So the Torah says, if I tell him it's asur, if I tell him it is forbidden, he's going to do it anyway. So it's better I tell him it's mutar. You understand? It's better to tell him it is mutar. It's okay, rather than telling him, at least if he does it with the consent of the Torah, with the authorization of the Torah, that it shouldn't be something that you do against the Torah. There is a tremendous philosophy there, by the way. We don't have the time now to go and explore this, but there is a tremendous... Sometimes people have to use their mind. Like, for example, some people might find it very bizarre that we start Ve'urahum today. It's possible that I am wrong, it's possible that I am not, but my mind told me that it would be, that Hashem would like that. This way, we don't burden too much people with just reading that make no sense anyway. So here the Torah says, okay, sometimes Hashem will tell you, okay, do it, as long as it will not make you become an enemy of the Torah. Because now you know, the Torah allows me, I'll do it. It's not good, it's really not good. But the Torah allows you to do it. Why? Because otherwise, the Torah knows you, you're going to do it anyway. So might as well do it with the permission of the Torah. Tremendous philosophy, but at the same time our sages said, if you are a good boy, you are not going to do that. You go to war and you see a beautiful woman, the Torah is not talking to everyone. If you have decency and purity of the heart, stay away from sin. The Torah is talking about somebody who cannot. He sees good things, it's allowed, I do it. It's allowed, because the Torah says it's okay, so I do it. Our sages said that's not so much okay. One has to be very careful, even when the Torah tells you it's okay. Let me give you an example. What about, it's glad kosher? You go to a wedding. Now, I'm not going to tell you are not allowed to. You're allowed to enjoy and eat. Just don't become an animal. Sometimes people, they just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. Why? You ask him, why do you eat so much? It's kosher, it's glad kosher. So what if it is glad kosher? Don't you realize that by eating too much, for example, you are bringing into your soul powers of evil? Here I'm telling you a big chidush. When somebody takes advantage of a permissive situation which is negative, but the Torah did not forbid you, be smart, because if you plunge into it with all your desires, you are going to come out of it worse than what you were before. When somebody eats, even though it's glad kosher, enjoy yourself, but he eats like an animal, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, you should know that he is doing a bad thing. Why? Why? The Torah says it's glad. It's glad. What do you want from my life? Yeah, but the Torah wants you to be a human being. Which means even there are circumstances in which, even when it is allowed, you still have the common sense to tell you, do not exaggerate. This I am sure you all agree, because everybody understands. The second mystery that we find in the parasha of this week, and I am going to conclude in 2 minutes, is the case of Ben Sorer Umore. You know what the Torah is telling us? That, for example, if you have a child who is brutal, aggressive, and does not listen to his parents, they bring him to the Beit Din, and the Beit Din will execute him, will kill him. And who's going to bring him to the Beit Din? His own parents. Does it make sense? Even our sages raised their hands and they said, Lo haya velo nivra ella lemashal. Our sages said the case of Ben Sorer Umore, the rebelling son, never happened. Of course it never happened. It cannot happen. So why is it that the Torah bothered to tell me the law of Ben Sorer Umore? To teach us to prepare ourselves for any possibility in life. You have people that are preparing, they are doing the best they can, but they are not preparing themselves before. How? Let's say here is a parent, he gives his children to the best yeshiva. What else do he want? He spends money. But he himself does not change his character. Is not a mensch. Does not behave at home the way he should be. So on one hand, he's doing everything fine. What do you want? What else do you want? There are so many people who send their children to public school. So what do you want? I am okay then. No, Habibi. You are not okay. Because the first obligation is ki tetze milhama al oyevecha. You have to go to war against your natural enemy, which is the Yetzer Hara. You don't pay. You don't, by paying money, you don't get rid of the Yetzer Hara. You don't, by paying and you send your child to yeshiva, do not think that the situation is going to be solved. Do not think that you are going to be rid of any problems in the future. You want to know guaranteed that you will be without any problems from your children? Yourself. Fight with yourself. It's not easy. One to change. I mean, everybody knows his bad and weak points. Right? So, in that case, what do? I send my child to yeshiva. That's not enough, ya habibi. You have to go to war. How? You try to take care of yourself. You change your nature. You have to become better. When you become better at home, then the children have the best education first, before the yeshiva. You know, the yeshiva, I always said that. Yeshiva is only second degree. The first yeshiva is home. Do you know that? And by the way, I dare to say the second yeshiva is the synagogue. Today. Not then. Today. Because the synagogue teaches you everything. And then the yeshiva. Then you can send your children to yeshiva. Very nice. But if you don't take care of those two things, the child must hear all the beginning and all the tefillot and everything as it should be. Plus the fact that you yourself become a man of good quality, then the child is assured the best education. That's what we learn from Ben Sorer Umore. It's not that Ben Sorer Umore will happen, but one has to prepare himself for the possibility to have a Ben Sorer Umore. Of course, Chas v'Shalom, nobody is going to bring his child to the Beit Din for such a thing. But Hashem says, He's giving us a mashal. A bad boy in the family is the responsibility of his parents, number one. Because the parents did not do enough, even when they thought they did a lot. And then what could happen? It could happen, here is the point, here is the crux of the matter. That Chas v'Shalom, a child could grow to be such a catastrophe that in philosophy at least it would be worthwhile to even execute him. That's what the Torah means. So those are two mysteries that we find in the Torah, that when you see a mystery in the Torah, you must explore the depth of it. I dedicate these words to the memory of my mother, Alaiha Shalom, Hanna Bat Miriam, and if possible with your consent, please rise as we say